774. Behaaloscha. Today's class is sponsored by Elaine Tanzaf in honor of all those who've helped her recently. So it's Hakoras Hatov, and the food is shiraim from last night. There was a siyum in honor of Rosie Wonders, and there was a lot of food, and some of it is here. It's left over. Please enjoy. We're going to be reading a parsha today, and our main focus is going to be on the Levim. Levim, it's all about the Levim. We have a few of them in the room today. You have, like I see, 3 inside here, and we're going to deconstruct and be very honest here about what the Levim are all about. Some say trouble. Now, if you look at the word Behaaloscha, right? It's a word that's talking about kindling the menorah, the lamp of the menorah. And the rabbis and Rashi shares with us that this first command given to Aaron regarding the lighting of the menorah relates to what was happening in the previous parsha. The previous parsha, they were going through the inauguration of the tabernacle of the Mishkan. The leaders of all the tribes brought gifts. Aharon senses that there is something lacking on his end and on the end of his tribe, of the Levim, that they did not offer anything. And he felt like something was missing. And the Almighty says to him, you know what? You have something greater, the lighting of the menorah. And some of the commentators, like the Ramban, notes that the way Aharon is being comforted is by being told that the menorah is unique because it is one of those services that will have continuity even after the destruction of the temple with the Hanukkah menorah. So that is what Aaron is dealing with, and this is how he is appeased. And Aaron's concern was not just for himself and his 2 children, but for his tribe, the Levim, because you have to remember that at that time there are only 3 active Kohanim. You have 22,000 Leviim. So Aharon is not just talking for himself, but rather for his tribe. The word Behaaloscha, leha'alot, relates to kindling. So what's the relationship between the kindling and aliyah? What's the difference between the two, right? Perhaps the Kindle is cheaper here, so before you make aliyah, you could buy one maybe, but there's obviously... So what is the relationship between the two? So there are 2 explanations presented. Number 1, it was an actual aliyah to light the candles because the high priest would have steps to make his way up. And it was an elevated moment. In an elevated moment, you could meditate, you could think about the significance. It symbolizes Jewish light, it symbolizes what we are about, a light to the world, a light to God. So there's an aliyah. But then there's explanation number 2, is that to kindle things properly, you come in with a fire, and you are sure that you are transferring the fire to the wick that is presented in front of you, and it's a transfer, and you have to be sure not to pull back your flame until the new one was oleh, made its way up. Right? Sometimes you're in a rush, Friday, to light Shabbos candles, and you start moving and you realize, hey, I didn't give it enough time at one of the wicks. Let's not look at anyone specific. So you have to be sure that it makes its aliyah. Okay, 2 explanations given. These 2 explanations to explain the word that really defines This week's portion, Behaaloscha, the idea of feeling elevated, which is really what we should be doing in life with all of our activities, feeling elevated. We're doing something special, right? Existence is not always easy, right? There are challenges in existence. And the ideal of life is to take those moments and saying, I'm doing something useful, right? I'm here in this world for some time. I am achieving something. And Judaism teaches you that you could feel that doing anything. B'chol drachecha da'ehu, we're told. That you could relate to God in all your activities. When you do things for the right reason, right, you feel this elevation. That's the aliyah. And then the other word that is used here, the other description of our aliyah is transferring it, to be sure that it is transferred, that the fire is transferred to the next candle. Let's keep that in mind. And now we're going to run through the parsha and try to see and reconnect to the two explanations of Behaaloscha. The portion starts off on page 774 briefly with a consecration of the Levites. They go through a process, which on page 776 you're going to read how it was done. Towards the end on page 776 we are told that the Levi'im are going to work from age 25 to age 50. Actually, in other places we are told that they are going to work from age 30 to age 50. So there are two explanations given. Perhaps they need training for 5 years. Perhaps they could come at age 25, but at age 30 it's a must by then. But it's a short window. To think about retirement at age 50 is quite fascinating, right? It's quite fascinating. When do you become a member of the retirement? 55? That's so young, no?
What was their lifestyle?
Also true. Yes, yeah, they were collecting Social Security already.
But not for Social Security.
Anyway, so here we go. We're going to try to move through the parsha. Page 780. Page 780 talks a little bit about the journey of the tabernacle and a description of how long they will be spending at times throughout that journey, because this was a journey with many stops. That's occurring on page 780. Page 782, chapter 10, verse 2, Moshe Rabbeinu is told that for the sake of the journey, this journey that will have masa, that will have journeys from place to place, and for their chaniyah, and when they are going to be settling at specific locations, you are going to need a device to bring people together and to inform them that it is time to travel. So what do they use? The trumpets. Aseh lecha shtei chatzotzrot kesef, and they're going to be made out of silver. What kind of sounds are the trumpets going to make? Well, it depends what the message is. So, in verse 2 we are told, Aseh lecha shtei chatzotzrot kesef miksha ta'aseh otam. You have to be sure that they are hammered out from one piece of silver. Vehayu lecha, and they're going to be yours for two reasons. Number one, lemikra ha'edah, to go ahead and assemble the nation. Number two, ule masa et hamachanot, and to go ahead and inform the camp that it's time to journey. How do they work it out? Well, verse 3, if it's going to be a tkiya v'taku bahen, if there's going to be a taku, there's going to be a gathering. Now they had this system that if you hear both, you know that everyone gathers. If you hear one, only the leaders gather. But one blast, the tkiya, which is the simple sound, that is used for gathering, lemikra ha'edah, to call everyone together. If, on the other hand, in verse 5, you hear the other sound, utkatem tru'ah, Then v'nasu hamachanot, and if you hear the blast of a truah, then you know that the camp shall journey. So far so good. These sounds indicate something. Two types of sounds. One of them, the simple tkiya, gathering together. Sounds like a Yom Tov, right? Mikra'e Kodesh, we're gathering together. We gather in the synagogue, gathering together to hear the words of Moshe. The journey, that is the tru'ah. Okay, keep that information in mind. And then, we are told, and now you have to turn to page 786. Page 786, they are finally on their way leaving Mount Sinai. And you have to realize that they arrive at Mount Sinai, Rosh Chodesh, Sivan, year 1 in the wilderness. And they spend there almost a complete year, because it is only on the 20th of Iyar in year 2 that they are actually leaving. Moshe Rabbeinu makes an attempt to convince his father-in-law to come, and that is the last conversation that's to take place here, but here we go. Page 786, verse 33, Vayisu mehar Hashem, and they go ahead and they journey from the mountain of Hashem, from the mountain of God, derech shloshet yamim, 2 ways to understand it. One is they traveled 3 days. One is that perhaps it was a journey that the distance was of 3 days, but they traveled very, very fast. And they have the Aron Brit Hashem noseh lifneihem, and they have the Ark of God in front of them. They are protected by clouds. Wonderful. Then we have the two verses that are very, very significant in our tradition. The text itself, really looking at it, and you see those upside down nuns, you know immediately that something funny is here, something is different about these verses. And they became so much part of our tefillot. And in addition, even in Talmudic literature, there's a fascinating statement in the Talmud where it talks about, God forbid, there's a fire in a structure. And you have some old Sifrei Torah, and it's Shabbos. And you want to transfer them from the private domain to the semi-public domain, which you don't do that on Shabbos. But you have some Sifrei Torah there. So the Talmud says, listen, as long as they still have letters and the Sifrei Torah still have sanctity, transfer them to honor the Sefer Torah. So the Talmud asks, okay, how many letters? When you say they must still have some letters to retain their sanctity, how many letters is that? So the Talmud tells us 85 letters. How do you get 85 letters? So the Talmud tells us because there is a book in Chumash that has 85 letters. What book in Chumash has 85 letters? And they point to these two verses. So these two verses, which have 85 letters, are an indication that this is like a book. This is the book that you turn to, right? People have books they turn to for their identity, for their essence, right? Everyone is asked, like when you have your interviews of, your favorite color, right? Your childhood friend, or like sometimes they use them as passwords, right? Like that you get when you forget your password and they ask you a whole series of questions. Your childhood friend, and your favorite color, and where your pet, of course. A lot of them it's interesting to deal with. What high school you went to. All these questions. One of them your favorite book. So this is a book here. So what's the significance of this book? So let's read the book. Vayihi bin Aharon, and when it was time for the journey, Vayomer Moshe. So Moshe calls out. He calls out to God. And he says, Kum Hashem, arise, act. What kind of action do we want from God? We want enemies and foes to scatter. We want those who hate you to flee. Okay? That's verse number 1 of the book. We just finished half the book. Book number 2, or the second part of the book, I should say. When things calm down, when there's rest, when finally there's a rest, what do we say? Shuva Hashem, there should be tranquility. What brings about tranquility to God? When He is among Rivevot Alfei Israel. Rivevot Alfei Israel. So you're going to translate that of the myriads of the thousands of Israel. Actually, the rabbis tell us that you read it as follows. That Revava is a unit. One more time. Revava in our tradition is a unit of 10,000. So rivevot are two of those units. Elef is a unit of 1,000. Two of them, alfei, is two of those units. So it is as if the text is telling us is that there is a rest. When is that rest achieved? When you have rivevot alfei, so what would be in numbers? How much would that be? 22,000, right? Rivevot and alfei. 22,000. Okay, that's what we have here. And then things go wrong. Everything goes wrong afterwards. These, you know, when you look at Bamidbar, and you want to, I talk about what the book is about. It is the book where everything that could go wrong goes wrong, plus, because we start complaining as a nation, right? Believe it or not, that the Jews are complaining. What do they complain about? Start off with food. Starts off with food, right? And then there's complaint about Israel, right? They come back, the report's no good. Then there's a complaint about leadership. And then there's a complaint that they don't have water, which is actually fair. The complaints all start. If you want to know where it begins right here. In the beginning of this chapter, it would say, Vayehi ha'am, not complainers, but kemitonenim, like complainers of bad. It starts off with an attitude. Right? Everything starts with the attitude. The negative attitude starts here. And the rabbis actually tell us that the departure from Sinai itself was with a bad attitude. The departure of Sinai was finally we're out of here. In the words of the rabbis, Ketinok haboreach mi bet hasefer. Meaning they heard the laws, but at the same time it was an experience. It was one of meaning, of identity. All those things we seek our whole life, they had it there. But they felt that we had it, meaning we want out of here already. So the section before the little book we talked about was negative. The section afterwards is negative. And according to one explanation, that is why we position here these two verses. In addition, the letters that you will see before and after is the letter Nun. Nun is a symbol of Nefilah. You know the Ashrei prayer that we are told. That you say every single day, Ashrei Yeshuveisecha, Adilu Chasel, Hashem Shekachalo, Tila Aromimcha Hashem. It's the Aleph Bet, right? A magnificent prayer because it is a prayer that tells us that God is in nature. It's considered even in some ways more significant than Hallel. Hallel you say when you experience a miracle. When you go ahead and you see in your daily life, when you see in nature, when you go out there, and you see the flowers blooming and you hear the birds chirping, and you see that there's order in nature, and you say, you know what? There's order here because there's a higher being, that's Ashrei. Okay? Poteach et yadecha, God sustains everything. It's a wonderful chapter, but we remove one letter is missing. The letter Nun for its Nefilah. It talks about falling. Because part of the human condition is that you fall, right? No one's perfect. You're going to fall. We have forgiveness, but we always have fallings, right? Maybe daily, sometimes hourly, right? In relationships, there's always going to be a fall. That's how it works. It's part of nature, but we skip it. So the nun is the idea that there's going to be a nefilah. That's reality. This section here is right in the middle of the fall, the big fall. And therefore there is a nun before and after these two verses which are going to create the book which we're going to address very soon, what it really teaches us. But this fall, you should know, is not just a fall for that generation, it really changes the direction of history. We are told the nation of Israel was supposed to leave Egypt, receive the Torah, be inspired, make their way to the land of Israel, be a light upon the nations, and assist the world in fulfilling its mission, in knowing what existence is about. That was supposed to be the right path. But there's a fall, because the educators, we the Jewish people, have an issue with attitude. We have a problem with complaining. We don't appreciate things, and the fall begins here. That's the big nun, right here. It begins right in this portion. And that's the significance of these two verses. And these two verses, which are a book, is really the book of life, It is going to be the book of those who are supposed to guide us in life. It's going to be all about the Levi'im. The book of these two verses is about the Levi'im. And it is about this Parsha, it is about Behaaloscha, because that's what the Levi'im are about. And it's going to be about the two blasts that we talked about as well. So let's try to put that together. So first of all, people sometimes ask, what do rabbis do all day? You ever hear that question? You did. Thank you, Alan Zuck. What does the rabbi do all day? Right? So I asked myself the same question. What on earth am I doing all day?
What don't you do?
No. It's really what on earth. Anyway. So I'm going to flip it. What do Levim do all day?
We don't.
No? Okay, what do the Levim do really? So Kohanim. Come on, they're non-stop Kohanim.
We wash
your hands. One time you go. They're active in the temple, the sacrifices. The Kohanim really. Let's ask a real question now. What were the Levim really doing? So what's incredible about the Levim, what's incredible about them, is that the poor guys had a major shift in their job. Their main job. There was one mission they had up until a specific point. And then it completely changed. You know that. There was a time that the Levi, right, the little Levi born, is told by his parents one day, when you're going to be a big boy, right, when you move out of the house at age 30, if you follow the news, right? When you move out of the house at age 30, guess what? You're going to become a schlepper. That's what they did. They carried, not quite holy things, let's not minimize it. But they were the transporters. You know that, right? Another a wife of Levi there. You have to mention that your husband has to know that he is made, and in his DNA is to carry things from place to place. The Holy Ark, right? Look. Well, the Holy Ark, the planks of the Mishkan, everything. They were traveling a lot in the wilderness, from place to place to place. Who had that mission? Who had that job? The Levim. Nosei Aaron. So that was your identity. Now that works well when we're going through that period of transfer, of traveling. What happens when we settle? What did you do? We finally have a Beis HaMikdash. They put it, but let's say they get to the Beis HaMikdash, and believe me, they are not schlepping the stones of the Beis HaMikdash from place to place, because it's there.
You're talking about the Beis HaMikdash?
They reach the Beis HaMikdash, or even, if you think about it, they reach the place called Shiloh. They are there for 369 years. They did not wait around the Levim for 369 years until it was destroyed and schlepped good. So their job came to an end during that period of time, and obviously once Yerushalayim is chosen, because we're not moving from there, for the record, we're not moving anywhere, right? That is our place. We were there first, it's ours. Even the ambassador of the United States was handed a picture with an understanding that he had to say afterwards that he didn't realize. But clearly we are in Yerushalayim, so no more schlepping, that's it. So what becomes your new mission? What becomes your new responsibility? What's your main focus?
Maintenance?
Maintenance is good, but it's not the main. I'm looking for the main thing. If you want to... Singing. How is your voice, Levim? So you have music in your genes. There's a musical talent, obviously.
You are actually.
Yeah. So you see, Levim are singing. Now think about it. Think about the change. People talk about career shifts, right? Career shifts. So here you have one from a one who is carrying goods from place to place, to a singer, a musician. It's interesting. It's a unique one. But what does it symbolize, right? What does it symbolize? But you have to agree, this is very significant, the singing. Halavim b'shiram. We talk about it in Shmoneh Esrei. We talk about it. Now, there were others that did play a part in the maintenance, opening and closing the doors. But the Levim had to do with Shirah. That's what it was all about. From transferring items from place to place to singing. What's the relationship between? What does that really symbolize? So let's talk about existence, right? Our existence a little bit. And we all struggle a little bit with our existence, right? What is it all about? Like, why are we here? What is existence? So you could start going through the works of these existentialists, right? You could start reading about Sartre and who else? Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and Heidegger maybe even, and Hannah Arendt. There's like many people that focus on the human condition. And so we struggle with it at times. Highly recommended not to struggle with it too often. Right? Highly recommended to do things and get your mind off of it. But really, human existence boils down to two things. Meshuggah and nachas. That's all of it. Meshuggah and nachas. Okay? What does meshuggah mean? Meshuggah mean you're going nuts. There are things that you have to take care of. And you have to go ahead and fix the car, and you have to go ahead and take care of picking up things, and and everything comes at the same time. And you go meshuggah, and suddenly the kids start needing things, and then you remember you're supposed to pick up, and you had an appointment. Welcome to meshuggah life. That's half of life. More than half. Okay, we're working on it. We're working on it, of keeping it within half, but there's meshuggah in life. What's the other half? There is moments, hopefully more than that. There's nachas. In other words, there are times when we sit there and we say, you know what, this is quite incredible. This is what we are about to enjoy, to appreciate. You sing about this experience you have, right? There are moments of nachas. That's what we wish people, right? Moments of nachas. The moments of nachas, right, of seeing continuity, seeing a future, seeing people you love, doing things that keep what you are about alive, that is nachas. Now, a lot of the meshuggah is a burden. And a lot of that burden has to do with taking care of things for the next moment. One more time, a lot of burden that you deal with is to take care of things to reach the next moment. A perfect example. A child is at home, or a grandchild, and they open the refrigerator, and they're a little 3-year-old, and they take out this big jug of milk, and they are dancing, trying to close the door at the same time. Now you know that if you just sit and relax that moment, what's going to happen? You're going to have, in 2 seconds, a job that's going to take 25 minutes to clean up, right? So you throw out that moment of relaxation, of that moment is thrown out because you're concerned about what you have to take care of later, right? And a lot of existence is focusing on not living in this moment, but taking care of things for the next moment. Do you agree on that? That a lot of things we do like that. We are doing it because we're concerned about the tomorrow. Or we have to work because we have to be sure that we can retire, right? Or we go ahead and we take care of children because we know that they're the future, there's continuity. A lot of it comes with meshuggah, right? Taking care of things. Why are we taking care of things? It's not for the survival of this moment. It is more for the journey of life. That's part of life. That part of life is really what we call a masa. It is a masa. It is because we're in a journey, because we're not going to always be at this state. We're not going to be able to capture this moment and live in it. We have to deal with the next moment that's coming. It could be 5 minutes from now. It could be 5 hours. It could be 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months. There are times that we have to focus on the future, and there's a burden in it. There is a burden. When a person says, I have to work because if I continue working, I could go out and retire at a specific age. So here I am thinking about 20 years from now, and I am dealing with an environment that I can't stand, but why am I doing it? For future. And sometimes you do it for the future generation. Welcome to Masa. Masa. That is half of the job of the Levi'im, where there's no focus on the now. The focus is, why am I carrying something? Is it because I am experiencing something that is elevating as I am carrying this heavy burden? Absolutely not. It's because I have a destination. Okay? And when you hear sounds, you know that we are told, on Rosh Hashanah, there are 2 sounds we have to hear. There's a big question about what's the proper attitude on Rosh Hashanah. Is it a time of happiness? I am standing there, it's a new year, it's a new beginning. Or is it a time that I should be thinking of the fact that, you know what, this is a time where I am being judged on the future based on the past. I should focus a little bit that there's a level of burden here. What do you feel on Rosh Hashanah? So you know what you're supposed to feel? Both, but you must sandwich the concern feel in the middle of two positive feelings. The positive feeling, the feeling of elevation, is a truah. You feel elevated. I'm elevated. I'm standing here. I've ended a year. I'm in Rosh Hashanah. I know who I am. I have a tradition. Truah is in the middle. Meaning, I start off with the tkiya, the sound of elevation. I end with the tkiya. The middle sound is that sound of a cry. So there is a place for that concern on Rosh Hashanah, but you better be sure to sandwich it. Sandwich it in the middle. Don't make it the identity of the day. You hear the idea. Sound symbolize something. If you go back to the sound of Masa, remember we talked about that on page 782. When they are supposed to have the Masa, what kind of sound? Masa, the burden of worrying about the future. What kind of sound would they hear for the Masa? A truah. It's a cry, right? It's mishugeh. It's, we have to go ahead and do it, but that's what we are about. Now they found meaning. They found meaning in it. That's what great people do. Great people have the ability of even the moment of Masa, they find meaning. But reality is, it's not always easy. That's Masa. On the other hand, there are moments when we gather together. We gather together and we're supposed to live in the moment, right? There's nothing more tragic when you have an incredible moment that you are experiencing, and you are thinking about tomorrow, right? I mean, there's absurdity there, because that is the moment of nachas, right? So that's the moment of when you gather together, either with people or within yourself, and it's a moment that is symbolizes by the tkiya, like you feel elevated. I am doing something. This is a moment that I want to grab. This is the moment of nachat, right? When you're miyushav, when you're settled. That's the other part of life, right? Now, the Levi'im themselves were with us with the journey when there was Masa, but when we reach the temple, when we reach our destination, what did they do? What is the greatest way of expressing what the heart feels when it is settled and feels that it is accomplishing something, it's in its mission? That's through song, the song of the Levim. They have that shift. But during the Beis HaMikdash, that is song. That's what song is about, right? We all have had those moments when you want to just sing, right? Hopefully in shul at times, right? When things work well, we are actually, we feel the song. We gather together. What's a Yom Tov? Yom Tov is gathering Mikrae Da, Mikrae Kodesh. You gather together. You feel elevated, right? And you have that tkiya. That's the elevation. So now, with an understanding of what the Levi'im are all about, we could go and look at the name of this week's portion. The name of this week's portion, Behaaloscha. Two things, right? One of them was, yes, aliyah by walking up the stairs, an elevation. But then there's the kindling, which is a symbol of transferring it to the next generation. That's so much of our existence, right? And it's the burden of our existence, right? You ever hear of Jewish tuition and Jewish day schools, right? What the burden, right? Go vote, by the way. Don't remember to vote in this coming election. And the two statements, it appears, have a correlation, right? Isn't there a better odds if we go blue that the schools get a little bit more money? Yes. Wishful thinking? Or yes. Susan says yes. So go blue. Okay, you see? You voted for Mr. Cho already? You're going to vote for Mr. Cho? Cho on our end of Bathurst. It's Cho, okay. It's a short name, easy to remember. I'm sure it wasn't the original name. So that's the idea of Masa and Noach. So let's briefly go through the parsha again. We have the Behaaloscha. You understand what the symbolism is? One is elevation, lighting the candles, and one is the burden of being sure that there's a transfer to the next. On page 782, when we talked about the two sounds of the trumpets, you understand what each one of them symbolizes. And then, when we move onto page 786 and we look at this book, Vahi bin Haaron. Vahi bin Haaron. You know, it's interesting that when you read Tehillim, you sometimes get the feeling as if King David was paranoid. Maybe I'm the only one, but now let me at least express why I sometimes get the feeling that the man was paranoid. And as if it was written by Nixon, lahavdil, of course. Why do I get that feeling once in a while?
He had good reason.
Okay, he had reason. But I'm starting off from the point of, this is a text that's supposed to inspire me about God, right? About the beauty of nature. And here he is only talking about oivim, and he's only talking about, I approached it, you see, you're already a touch older, and you have more experience, but I started as a young person looking at it. When I was naive, and I thought that, the world is a place of love. The world is a place where humanity comes together to relate to God. So if this is a text that we are supposed to use to inspire us, to come together as a human race and to relate to the higher being, why is this man paranoid? That's the question that I asked. Because he is only talking about oivai omruma, oivai soinai, oivai soinai. What's your issue? So you have someone with a little bit more experience, right? Who's not naive, right? And what do you say? The man was chased by many. In other words, he was just expressing a reality. He's not paranoid. Sometimes the paranoid person is actually being pursued by others. It happens. And David is not paranoid at all, but it's a reality. People are up to uproot him. But he's not talking only about himself. What is he talking about? The people of Israel. And sometimes, if you walk in with my naive attitude, you make bad decisions, right? And there are those who understand that, people are out to get us. And we read the news differently, and we are a little bit more concerned, we're a little bit more aware of things. It is important to actually be aware of the fact that there are people that hate us. It is important to know that there are those that indeed want to uproot us. Now, that's a sad condition that is only due to the fact that the world had a nefilah. In other words, if indeed we would have fulfilled our mission, and would have been inspired by Sinai, make our way to Israel, and inspire the world, and be a light upon the nations, the world indeed would be looking at Israel, but not looking at Israel with its negative attitude, but look to Israel for inspiration. No one could give me a rational explanation. How is it that what happens in Israel is followed in such detail? I mean, the absurdity, if you step back and think about what happened in the past few weeks, how a few kilometers away in Syria, right, they are bombing, they are gassing, and the world, there's nothing addressed about the issue, zero. And you have a couple of Palestinians that are basically trying to cut a fence and make their way into Israel, they're shot, and the world goes crazy. Give me a rational explanation. How do you explain that, right? How will that, one day, how will that... Because
the world subconsciously judges Bnei Israel in a higher metric than anybody else.
Okay. So the idea is that it's not something that's natural. It is something that the world looks at Israel, and it is as if they are looking up.
They expect a higher
standard. Higher standard.
Than any other country in the world.
Okay? So the reality is, as a result of what you're suggesting, the reality is that due to the fact that we had this fall, and we are not fulfilling our mission, the nations of the world, as we are traveling, as we have this masa, what are we going to be facing? A lot of oivim and a lot of sonim. In other words, the first verse of this book that we call Vahi bin Haron, the first verse talks about the first part of the mission and the job of the Levim. The difficult job during the masa, during the journey. When we go from place to place, we are not there yet. You know what we're going to be facing when we are not there yet? We're going to be facing the oivim and the sonim, those who hate us, those who want to uproot us. And it is due to the fact that we have a Moshe Rabbeinu who could call out, and when we stick to the values of Moshe Rabbeinu, and we stick to the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, we could call out and say, Kuma Hashem, arise, act, that those that hate us should be dispersed. Those that want to uproot us should vanish. We could turn to it. It is not the most pleasant prayer, but at least we are realistic. Jews must be realistic, right? It's difficult to talk about the years of the 1930s, but and I'm not, and God forbid to judge anyone, but I can tell you a fact that my grandfather in Lithuania, he was a young man in his 30s, and he had a very distinguished rabbinic position. He was like the youngest rabbi among the larger cities in Lithuania. And here he was in this Alitus, and he married well because he married the daughter of the former rabbi who was no longer alive. So he just walked into the position in 1929, very well respected, very well established position. It looked like he was safe. And in 1936, he starts looking around, and by 1937 he moves to Montevideo, Uruguay. And I have a letter in my office of one of his colleagues writing him from somewhere in Poland and said to him, maybe you could explain to me your irrational decision. I mean, it's like being the chief rabbi of New York and moving to Little Rock, Arkansas. It seemed absurd at the time. But here was my grandfather that would read the news, and he was reading what was happening in Germany, and he had this bad feeling, right? And others would say to him, you are paranoid. And he would say, no, that there are indeed smisanecha, there are people that hate us to such an extent that I don't know if I could stay here, right? This is a sad reality that exists, and the Levim have to assist us as we are going through this journey. They have to schlep the burden of the fact that we are not there yet. We're not at that moment that we could just say, nachas, how great is Canada. We love Canada, right? We're very proud. We pray for the welfare of Canada. But be realistic. We're still on the masa. When indeed do we reach our destination? That is in the second half of this book. Uvenucho Yomar. When we rest in our place, in the land of Israel, in Yerushalayim, right? We're getting there, stage by stage. The Temple Mount. When we reach our destination, what do we say? That God is no longer going to have to be the God that is a warrior. We're not going to be a nation that's going to have to hold the sword, but we can make it into a plowshare. We could go ahead and use our knowledge of technology, which starts off in the war field, and use it to make the world a better place. And there's going to be a Shuva Hashem. There's going to be tranquility. Through who? You know how many Levim there were in the wilderness? 22,000. There were 22,000 of you guys, right? 22,000. And there's going to be a rest, and you guys are going to assist us in really, really appreciating what we have. We're going to live in the moment, and you're going to sing the song for us. Berivevot alfei Israel, rivevot, 10,000, 20,000, alfei are 2,000. The 22,000, which symbolizes the Levim, your mission is going to change. You're no longer going to be there concerned about reaching the tomorrow. You're going to assist us in figuring out how to appreciate the today, to sing to God. And that's the journey from Meshuga the first half, to Nachas. Welcome to the book that symbolizes the journey of the people of Israel. We are living at a time that we have a little bit of both in some ways. We still have plenty of Meshuga, but there is a little bit of Nachas indeed in our times. We have to appreciate the Nachas of a Jewish stage, a homeland for the Jewish people, that if there's a desire to go somewhere, you have a homeland. Last night there was a Haskara for Rosalie Wenner. The fact that here she is, her dream to make it to Eretz Yisrael, and the fact that there's a state that assisted her, basically, of making her dream come true. We have a little bit of nachat. Hopefully we could elevate ourselves and get rid of all the mishugasin and indeed merit nachat with the songs of the Levim again. Thank you very much. A good day next week and the week after. Bezrat Hashem, we're not here. We're going in for some Bezrat Hashem, some nachat, a wedding in Baltimore. But we see you 3. What is it? 3 weeks from now. Okay, we'll be in the calendars. Thank you so much. Thank you to our sponsor. Thank you to everyone for coming.